The town of Willow Creek had always been known for its peaceful streets and tight-knit community. Nestled between wide fields and dense woodlands, it was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and children played freely from sunrise to sunset. But that peaceful rhythm shattered one ordinary Tuesday afternoon when 4 children disappeared. Emily Parker, age 10, her younger brother Liam, age 7, and their neighbors' twins, Ava and Noah, both 8, had gone out to ride their bikes like they did every afternoon. They promised to return by dusk, as they always had. But when the sun dipped below the treetops and their bikes remained parked near the forest edge, their parents knew something was wrong. Calls were made, lights flicked on across town. By midnight, half the community was scouring the woods with flashlights, shouting names into the darkness. The police launched a full search operation. Dogs were brought in, helicopters buzzed overhead, and dozens of volunteers combed every inch of the surrounding area. Flyers were taped to every pole, every grocery store window, and every car windshield. But despite the overwhelming response, there were no signs, no footprints, no belongings, nothing. By the 6th day, hope began to falter. Media outlets swarmed the town, broadcasting every theory they could think of. Residents grew restless. Fear replaced optimism. For the first time, in generations, Willow Creek no longer felt safe. That was when the call came from a neighboring county. Deputy Lauren Tate, a seasoned officer with a background in military canine operations, had heard about the case and offered her assistance. She was known for her sharp instincts, but it was her partner canine Zeus who was the true legend. Zeus was a large, sleek German shepherd with eyes that missed nothing and a nose trained to detect even the faintest of scents. He had helped solve missing persons cases before, earning respect in circles far beyond his small department. Lauren arrived, quietly on a Thursday morning, wearing a faded uniform and calm determination. Zeus, alert as always, sat beside her in the back of her patrol SUV. Chief Reynolds of Willow Creek met her at the station, exhaustion clear in his posture. "We've turned over every inch of this town," he said. "I'm not even sure what's left to look at." Lauren simply nodded. "Zeus and I will start from the beginning." The first thing she did was walk the area where the children's bikes had been found. Zeus sniffed around carefully, his body tense and alert. He paused near the tree line, then circled back, ears perked. Lauren made notes. She spoke with the parents, listened more than she talked. By afternoon, she asked to see the entire search grid the local team had covered. That evening, while others reviewed evidence for the 100th time, Lauren traced a new route on the map, one that led just beyond the original perimeter. The next morning, she asked about a particular location marked faintly on an old property map, a barn at the edge of the northern woods. "Abandoned since the 80s. One officer said with a shrug. "We checked it early on. It was empty." "Was it cleared with dogs?" she asked. "No, just visually. Nothing stood out." Lauren exchanged a glance with Zeus. His ears twitched at the word barn. He stood up, tail stiff. To Lauren, that was enough. "We'll check it again." By the time they reached the structure, the sun was beginning to dip again behind the hills. The barn looked exactly how it had been described, run down, weathered, leaning slightly to one side like it had grown tired of standing. Boards were loose, paint long gone, vines creeping up the sides like fingers trying to reclaim it. Zeus jumped from the SUV without hesitation. As Lauren approached the barn doors, he was already sniffing along the edges, tail low and nose busy. Lauren pushed open the creaky door. Inside was dust, hay, and shadows. Wooden beams sagged above, and broken tools littered the corners. But Zeus wasn't interested in any of that. He made a beeline for the back wall, where he began to circle tightly. Lauren followed, shining her flashlight where he focused. Nothing obvious stood out, but Zeus barked once short, sharp, and confident. Lauren crouched down and began brushing away the straw. Her hand touched something hard. She paused. Her fingers returned to the same spot and felt the outline of something thick, solid edge. As she cleared more hay away, a wooden handle revealed itself. Nearly flush with the floorboards, a trapdoor. "Zeus," she whispered, voice steady. "Good boy." The barn hadn't been empty after all, and Zeus had just found the first clue to something no one had expected. Lauren stood still for a moment, one hand resting on the weathered trapdoor, the other gripping her flashlight tightly. The air inside the barn seemed to shift suddenly heavier, more alive with possibility. Dust swirled through the fading beams of light as Zeus sat at her side, his eyes never leaving the trapdoor. Two local officers who had accompanied her to The sight exchanged surprised glances. "I didn't know that was there," one said softly. "We looked around this place days ago." Lauren didn't reply right away. She brushed more straw aside, revealing a rusty metal ring embedded in the wood. The hinges were nearly invisible under layers of time and dirt. This entrance wasn't just overlooked, it had been hidden deliberately, or simply forgotten through the years. With some effort, they pried it open. The door groaned loudly, disturbing the silence like a long-forgotten secret finally being spoken. A narrow shaft yawned beneath them, revealing a wooden ladder descending into darkness. The scent that rose was old and earthy like damp soil and wood that had spent too long. Underground. Zeus leaned forward and sniffed again. His ears twitched. He gave one more bark, louder this time, and without waiting for a command, he stepped onto the ladder and began his descent. Lauren's heart pounded. She trusted him completely, but that didn't erase the sense of uncertainty that gripped her. She turned to the others. "Radio for backup," she said. "And bring the thermal camera. We're going down." By the time they descended into the shaft, Zeus had already reached the bottom. Lauren followed him carefully, flashlight in one hand and her other hand steadying herself on the ladder's rails. The shaft opened into a narrow corridor, the walls built from crumbling brick and earth. The passage stretched farther than she expected. "Looks like an old storm shelter," one officer muttered behind her. "But why would it connect to a barn?" "Could have been a root cellar or hiding spot back in the day," Lauren replied. "But right now, we need to find out what's down here." Zeus was already ahead, his form barely visible in the dim glow. Then he paused, tail straight, body still. Lauren approached slowly. Her flashlight swept across the walls, revealing scratch marks, teeny ones, small fingerprints smeared in the dust, the kind made by children. Her breath caught. "They've been down here," she whispered recently. The tunnel split into two paths. Zeus hesitated only a second before taking the one on the right. The air grew thicker, and the sounds from above faded into silence. Every step forward echoed. Then, faintly just for a moment, Lauren thought she heard something else. A shuffle, a whisper, a faint cough. She froze. "Did you hear that?" she asked the others. The officer behind her nodded slowly. "Something's down here." Zeus suddenly picked up speed, his bark echoing off the walls. They followed him in a rush. The tunnel curved sharply before opening into a low-ceilinged chamber. Lauren's flashlight illuminated the space and her heart nearly stopped. In the far corner, surrounded by scattered wrappers, a tattered blanket, and the faint glimmer of a flashlight that had long run out of power sat for children. They were curled up close together, their faces pale and tired. Emily looked up first, her eyes wide with shock and hope. Then Liam stirred, and the twins slowly lifted their heads. When Zeus stepped forward, they didn't flinch, they reached out. "You found us," Emily whispered hoarsely, voice cracking. Lauren dropped to her knees beside them. "You're okay now," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "We've got you. You're going home." The children were weak but alive, they explained, haltingly, how they had fallen through a rotted floorboard in the barn and landed in this strange underground system. Their shouts for help never reached the surface. Their flashlights died 2 days ago. They had run out of snacks yesterday. Hope had begun to slip away until they heard Zeus barking. Lauren gently wrapped an emergency blanket around Emily's shoulders. "That dog right there never gave up on you," she said with a soft smile. "You held on, and so did he." Zeus laid down beside the children, tail slowly wagging as if to say, "You're safe now." Above ground, reinforcements were on the way, but down in that forgotten tunnel, something greater had happened, proof that, even in the darkest places, determination, courage, and the unshakable bond between a dog and his handler could shine through. The barn hadn't just held dust and decay. It had held a miracle. Inside the cramped underground shelter, time seemed to stand still. The air was thick, stale, and filled with the smell of old earth and mildew. Lauren gently checked each child for injuries, her voice calm and reassuring. Emily, the oldest, kept glancing at Zeus, as if still trying to believe he was real. The twins, Ava and Noah, were trembling slightly, holding hands tightly. Little Liam leaned against his sister, his eyes half closed. Lauren activated her radio. "This is Deputy Tate. I've located all 4 missing children. They're alive. I repeat, all 4 are alive. We need medical assistance at the barn immediately. They've been underground for several days. Alert, rescue and pediatric response units." Zeus, lying next to the children with his head resting near Liam, seemed to instinctively know they needed him close. He wasn't barking anymore. He was simply present, calm, steady, a comforting shadow. Among flickering flashlights and tense breaths, one of the officers passed down a backpack from the surface filled with emergency supplies, water, soft snacks, and thermal blankets. As the children drank and ate slowly, color began to return to their cheeks. Lauren stayed close, asking soft questions and gently encouraging them to speak. "How long have you been down here?" she asked. Emily swallowed and answered, her voice dry. "This is day 9, I think. We counted until we ran out of light." Lauren nodded, heart aching. "Did you try calling for help?" "We did," Emily said, blinking back tears. "Every day at first. We yelled and knocked on the ceiling, but no one ever answered. We thought maybe no one would find us." Zeus gave a small whine, nudging Emily's hand with his nose. She reached out and stroked his head weakly, smiling for the first time in days. "And then we heard him. We heard barking." "That's Zeus," Lauren said gently. "He hears what others miss." An officer approached Lauren with his voice lowered. "This tunnel system stretches farther than we thought. It wasn't just a cellar, it might have been used for storage or shelter back in the day. There's another path back there, but it's unstable. We'll have to collapse that part once everyone's out, just to be safe." Lauren nodded, but her focus remained on the children. She knew the psychological trauma of being trapped could sometimes outlast the physical toll. She knelt beside them again. "You were brave," she said. "All of you. You helped each other survive. That takes more strength than most people ever show." Emily lowered her gaze. "I just didn't want Liam to be scared." "He wasn't," Lauren said, "because you were with him." Outside, the barn was now surrounded. Lights flashed as emergency vehicles lined the old dirt road, and paramedics rushed toward the scene. Word had begun to spread around town. Families stood just beyond the tape, hands clasped in prayer or held over their mouths in disbelief. Reporters gathered cautiously, unsure whether what they'd heard was true. It didn't take long for the children to be lifted gently through the trapdoor, one by one. Blankets were wrapped around them, and paramedics quickly began checking vitals and administering care. Parents were already running toward the site, held back gently by officers as they waited for clearance. Lauren emerged last, her boots covered in dirt and her flashlight dangling at her side. Zeus followed right behind, his coat dusty but his eyes as alert as ever. A cheer broke out across the crowd as the children were loaded into ambulances. Tears streamed down faces that had worn nothing but worry for over a week. Emily's mother ran to the stretcher, collapsing in tears as she held her daughter's hand. "You're okay," she whispered over and over. "You're okay." Emily managed a tired smile. "Zeus found us." The moment struck everyone watching. Cameras captured the image of the girl reaching out again to pet Zeus as he sat beside her stretcher. He didn't move, didn't bark, just leaned gently into her touch. Lauren stood quietly to the side, her eyes filled with relief. For all the training and tools they had, it was still the instinct of a dog that had made the difference. Zeus had refused to ignore a hunch. Where others had seen a forgotten barn, he had seen a clue. Where others had turned away, he had dug deeper. And now, their lives had been brought back from silence. Lauren looked down at her partner and whispered, "Good boy, Zeus, you did it." He wagged his tail once, but his eyes never left the children. The hospital room was warm and bright, a stark contrast to the cold shadows the children had endured beneath the barn. Monitors beeped softly, nurses moved quietly, and the air smelled of antiseptic and safety. Emily, Liam, Ava, and Noah lay in 4 separate beds, each wrapped in clean blankets, IVs gently delivering fluids and nutrients to their frail bodies. But despite the exhaustion in their eyes, there was light in them now, light that hadn't been there before. Doctors confirmed that the children were malnourished, dehydrated, and suffering from fatigue, but miraculously, none had life-threatening injuries, thanks to the snacks and water they'd carried in their backpacks. They had managed to survive those long, harrowing days underground. Emily, always the most responsible of the group, had rationed everything carefully and done her best to comfort the others when their spirits faltered. Meanwhile, the town of Willow Creek was still buzzing. News vans remained parked outside the hospital, reporters eager to get even a glimpse of the young survivors. But local authorities had made it clear the children needed peace, not publicity. For now, the press would have to wait. Inside the hospitable, Lauren sat quietly beside Emily's bed. Zeus lay curled at her feet, his head resting on his front paws. He seemed to know the children still needed him, even here. Every so often, one of them would reach out to pet him, and his tail Wood thumped softly in response. You stayed with us, Emily said, her voice hoarse but sincere. Even when we thought no one else would. Lauren nodded slowly. We never stopped looking. But Zeus's the reason we found you. He knew where to go when no one else did. Emily looked down at the hospital bracelet on her wrist. We thought the barn was just a place to play. We'd been there before. But this time, when Liam walked across the floor, it gave way under his feet. We all tried to grab him, but the boards cracked and we fell in too. She paused, her voice trembling slightly. We couldn't get out. It was too high, and the walls were slippery. We shouted for help until our voices gave out. At first, we thought someone would find us soon, but days passed. Then the flashlight stopped working, and we just waited. Lauren reached out and gently squeezed her hand. You did exactly what you needed to do. You stayed calm. You helped each other. That's why you're all here. Zeus lifted his head, as if sensing the emotion in the room, and rested it on Emily's mattress. She smiled and scratched gently behind his ears. He was the first thing I saw when that light came through the tunnel, she whispered. I thought I was dreaming. Across the room, Liam had already fallen asleep again. Ava was quietly sketching Zeus in the notebook the nurse had given her. And Noah was asking questions about how dogs can smell through dirt and wood. The room, once filled with fear, was now filled with soft laughter and the warmth of healing. Outside the hospital room, Lauren stepped into the hallway and found Chief Reynolds waiting for her. You did good, he said quietly. They're alive because of you. Lauren shook her head. Because of Zeus. Chief Reynolds glanced through the window into the room, his eyes softening. We almost missed it. That barn was written off on the first day. If you hadn't followed your instincts. Wasn't my instincts, she replied, glancing down at Zeus. He's the one who felt it. He knew the barn wasn't empty. Reynolds nodded slowly. Well, whatever it was, the whole town's talking about it. We're planning a welcome home ceremony once the kids are well enough. I think the entire town wants to meet their hero. Zeus thumped his tail on the linoleum floor, as if he already knew he was the center of attention. Later that evening, Emily's father stepped into the room, his eyes still red from days of worry and sleepless nights. He knelt beside Zeus, placed a hand gently on the dog's back, and whispered, Thank you. He didn't say it loudly. Didn't make a scene, just a quiet moment of gratitude between a father and the creature that had brought his child back to him. Zeus closed his eyes, breathing in slowly, peacefully. He didn't need words. He had done what he was born to do, and now 4 children were alive because of it. The morning the children were discharged from the hospital, the town of Willow Creek felt different. For over a week, fear and sorrow had hung in the air like a storm cloud. But now, something had shifted. There was warmth in every glance, lightness in every step, and relief in every breath. The children were coming home, and the entire town wanted to show how much it mattered. It started small. Emily's neighbor strung up a banner that read, Welcome home, brave hearts. Then someone placed 4 small stuffed animals on the hospital steps, one for each child. By noon, the sidewalks were lined with handmade signs, children holding balloons, and townspeople gathered shoulder to shoulder. They weren't just celebrating a rescue, they were honoring courage, faith, and the dog that had made the impossible possible. A police escort led the ambulance convoy into town. No sirens, just soft lights and slow movement. Zeus rode in the backseat of Lauren's patrol SUV, head poking out the window, ears perked at the sound of the crowd's cheers. He wore a clean vest, polished badge, and a blue ribbon loosely tied around his neck, tied by one of the nurses before they left the hospital. It suited him. When they reached the town square, the children were gently helped out of the ambulances. Their families rushed forward, hugging them tightly. Tears flowed freely, tears of joy, of release, of long-held fear finally melting away. Emily stood on her own, hand in her father's, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Zeus. She stepped forward and knelt. Opening her arms, Zeus trotted straight to her. The crowd erupted in applause. Mayor Halbert stepped up to the podium, set at the edge of the square. He adjusted the microphone, looked out at the sea of faces, and began to speak. Today, Willow Creek witnessed something powerful. We were reminded that hope is not something you sit, something you hold onto, even when everything else goes dark. These 4 brave children never gave up. Their families never stopped searching. And one remarkable dog refused to let the trail go cold. He turned toward Lauren and Zeus. Deputy Tate, you brought something into our town that we'll never forget. You brought back our children. And Zeus. He smiled, pausing as the dog cocked his head curiously. You brought them home. The mayor bent down and placed a medal gently around Zeus's neck. It gleamed in the sunlight, etched with a simple inscription. For unwavering loyalty and bravery. Hero of Willow Creek. Zeus blinked slowly and wagged his tail. After the ceremony, townspeople approached to shake Lauren's hand and pet Zeus gently. Parents whispered thank yous with trembling voices. Children asked if they could hug the dog who had become a legend. Lauren made sure to keep him close and calm, knowing this attention, though well-meaning, was new to him. But Zeus handled it, all with quiet grace. Later, as the crowd began to thin, Lauren sat on a bench with a bottle of water in one hand and Zeus stretched out at her feet. Emily approached again, holding something behind her back. I made this for him, she said softly, handing over a drawing. It showed Zeus, standing tall beside the old barn, tail raised high, and behind him, for small smiling figures with their hands held together. At the top, written in purple marker, were the words, Zeus the Brave. Lauren smiled as her eyes welled with tears. He's going to treasure this. Zeus gave a soft bark, as if agreeing. Before Emily left, she leaned down and whispered, in his ear, I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. You made sure of that. As the sun began to set, casting long golden beams across the town square, Lauren looked around at the place that had welcomed her and her partner not as strangers, but as family. She had worked many cases. She had seen many endings. But this one, was different. Not because of the crowd, not because of the cameras, but because of a barn that everyone thought was empty and a dog who knew better. Zeus, stretched out lazily in the grass now, looked up at Lauren and let out a tired sigh. She reached down and scratched between his ears. Yeah, she whispered. You earned a nap, hero. A week after the rescue, Lauren received a call from Emily's mother, Sarah Parker. Her voice was calm but carried the kind of weight that made Lauren sit up straighter. Emily wrote something while she was down there, she said softly. It's a journal. She wants to show it to you and to Zeus. Later that afternoon, Lauren and Zeus arrived at the Parkers' home. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically from the days of anxious waiting. Balloons still hung from the porch, and paper hearts lined the walkway with messages like, thank you, Zeus, and welcome back, heroes. But inside, it was quiet. Peaceful. Emily greeted them with a shy smile and a small, spiral-bound notebook tucked under her arm. Zeus gave a gentle bark and wagged his tail when he saw her, trotting over to rest his head on her knee. I wrote every day, she said, petting him softly. When the others were scared, I told them stories. And when it was really quiet, I just wrote things down to keep my mind busy. Lauren sat down beside her as Emily flipped through the worn pages. The first few were dated, the handwriting careful but shaky. Day 1. We're okay. Liam hurt his knee when we fell, but I cleaned it with water from my bottle. We can't climb out. I think someone will find us soon. Day 3. We're hungry, but we still have some crackers and 2 bottles left. I gave Liam the flashlight. It makes him feel brave. Noah keeps trying to be funny, and Ava hums songs. I told them a story about a superhero dog who saves kids in a cave. I hope they liked it. Lauren's eyes stung. Zeus sat silently, as if he could feel every word. As Emily turned more pages, the ink faded slightly, and the lines grew more emotional. Day 6. We heard something today. Maybe footsteps. Or wind. I'm not sure. But I told the others not to give up. Even if they don't find us today, they will tomorrow. Day 8. We had to turn the flashlight off to save the batteries. We sing together now. It helps. Liam misses Mom. I told him we'll see her again. I don't care if no one hears Mime going to keep yelling every morning. Someone will hear us. A dog maybe. A hero dog. Emily flipped to the final page. Her hands a little shaky. Day 9. Before the light came, I heard barking. I thought it was a dream. But the others heard it too. I think someone's here. Please God, let it be real. Lauren looked at her gently. That was the moment we found you, she said. That bark, that was Zeus telling me he'd found something. Emily gave a small laugh. I knew it, I told Ava. See? The hero dog came. Just like in my story. Lauren cleared her throat and tried to steady her voice. You were the hero down there. He kept them calm. He kept them hopeful. Emily shrugged a little. I just didn't want them to be scared. Sarah joined them in the living room, placing a glass of juice on the table for her daughter. We were scared up here too, she said. But somehow, Emily never lost hope. I think writing helped her believe it would all end okay. Lauren reached out and gently touched the cover of the notebook. Would you be willing to share this? Maybe at the school assembly next week. Emily hesitated, then nodded. Only if Zeus comes too. Zeus gave a soft chuff, as if answering yes. A few days later, the school gymnasium was packed. Students, parents, and teachers filled the seats. And even the school janitor stood quietly at the back, wiping his eyes before the presentation began. Lauren walked up to the front with Zeus at her side, and Emily followed close behind, holding her journal. She read 3 pages aloud, one from the beginning, one from the middle, and the last from just before the rescue. Each word echoed in the silent hall, a reminder of what courage really looked like. When she finished, she turned to Zeus and smiled. "He's not just a K9 officer," she said. "He's the reason I'm standing here today." The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Zeus sat calmly, tail wagging, as children waved and clapped. Teachers wiped away tears. Parents hugged their kids a little tighter. That night, as Lauren drove home with Zeus riding quietly in the back seat, she thought about the notebook, about Emily's steady voice, about hope carved into the pages by a little girl trapped in the dark, and she thought about how one book, just one, had been enough to change everything. The days that followed the school assembly were filled with a sense of quiet gratitude that settled over Willow Creek like a warm blanket. Life slowly began to return to normal, but something had changed, especially for the children who had been found beneath that bond. Emily, Liam, Ava, and Noah weren't just classmates anymore. They were survivors, bonded by an experience most couldn't understand. And at the center of that bond was Zeus. Zeus became more than a hero. He became a friend. Every Friday afternoon, Lauren brought Zeus by to visit the children. It started at Emily's house, but soon became a weekly tradition at the park near the school. The kids would run toward him with open arms the moment they spotted his tall, noble figure stepping out of the SUV. Zeus, always calm and steady during work, transformed in those moments, his tail wagging fast, ears perked, and eyes full of joy. He'd lie down in the grass while Liam read picture books beside him, or chase a ball Noah tossed, only to return it gently and lay it at Ava's feet. Emily preferred to sit quietly and brush his coat with a soft brush she kept in her backpack. No one questioned why. It was her way of staying connected to the one who had answered her calls in the dark. Lauren watched all of it from a short distance, always keeping an eye on her partner but giving the kids space to feel free. Zeus wasn't just comforting them, he was helping them heal. On one visit, Emily's father approached Lauren while the kids were playing a made-up game called Zeus Search Team. He folded his arms and nodded toward the dog. "It's amazing," he said quietly. "They talk about him more than anything else. Not the tunnel, not the fear, just Zeus." Lauren smiled. "Sometimes we don't need to talk about the pain. We just need something that makes us feel safe again. He does that for them." "I was wondering," he added, pausing, "would it be possible for Emily to visit Zeus on her birthday? We're having a small party, and she's been asking if her hero dog could come." Lauren chuckled. "Only if you save him a slice of birthday cake." The birthday came a week later, and the moment Zeus stepped into the backyard, complete with a blue bow on his collar and a balloon tied gently to his harness, Emily ran to him with arms wide open. The guests clapped and smiled as she knelt beside him, wrapping him in a tight hug. A special cake had been made, one shaped like a dog bone with frosting that read, "To Zeus, our hero." And next to Emily's own cake sat a bowl of Zeus's favorite treats, prepared with care. Later that evening, Emily stood with Lauren near the fence as the party wound down. The sky was turning gold with sunset, and the sounds of laughter still floated across the yard. "Do you think Zeus remembers everything that happened?" Emily asked. Lauren looked down at her partner, who was stretched out on the grass nearby, content and calm. "I think he remembers the most important part, you. He knows he found someone worth fighting for, and he remembers that you were strong enough to hold on until he got there." Emily was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "I think I'll always hear his bark in my dreams. But now, it's not scary. It's like a promise." Laura nodded slowly. "That's exactly what it is." The friendship between Zeus and the children only grew stronger over time. They made him birthday cards, drew chalk art of him on the sidewalks, and told other students stories about the best dog in the world. He was a guardian, in their hearts, living proof that even the darkest moments could be turned into light. In the police department, a new wall had been added in the main hallway, Zeus's Wall of Honor. It included photos from the rescue, letters from the children, and even Emily's journal entry about hearing him bark. Officers who passed by often stopped to read a quote carved into a bronze plaque beneath the display. Sometimes, all it takes to save a life is one bark from someone who never gave up, and that bark, once heard in the silence of a forgotten barn, had become the sound of hope for an entire town. Months had passed since the rescue, but in Willow Creek, the memory of what happened beneath that old barn never faded. The children had returned to school, their laughter once again echoing through playgrounds and classrooms. Families breathed easier. The forest no longer held the same shadows it once had, and at the heart of it all stood the quiet legacy of one determined Zeus. Lauren and Zeus had gone back to their routine, answering calls, patrolling neighborhoods, and helping wherever they were needed. But things weren't quite the same. Everywhere they went, people stopped to wave, to thank them, to ask about their town's hero. Sometimes it was just a nod of respect from a passing driver. Other times, it was a drawing handed to Zeus by a child who barely came up to his shoulder. Zeus, ever humble, took it all in stride. He didn't bark for attention or puff up his chest. He remained the same loyal partner, watchful, strong, steady. But Lauren knew. She could see it in his eyes. Something inside him had changed too. He had made a difference, and somewhere deep in his loyal heart, he understood that. One bright Saturday morning, the entire town gathered for a special unveiling. The barn had long since been demolished, its rotted beams and forgotten secrets removed for good. In its place, thanks to donations and volunteer efforts, stood a brand new playground. It was built with care, colorful and safe, filled with slides, swings, and laughter. But at the entrance stood something more meaningful, a life-size bronze statue of Zeus. He was depicted exactly as he had looked that day, at the barn, ears perked, nose down, body alert and brave. At his feet were 4 small paw prints etched into the base, each with a child's initials beside it. A plaque read, "In honor of Canine Zeus, whose courage unearthed not just for missing children, but the strength of an entire town." When Lauren stepped forward to speak, she found her voice faltering for the first time in a long while. The crowd was silent, watching her, and Zeus stood beside her. Just like always. "There are many ways to serve a community," she began, her voice low, but clear. "Some wear uniforms, some wear badges, and some, like Zeus here, wear nothing but fur and loyalty." She paused, glancing down at him. He looked up at her, then sat calmly at her feet. Zeus didn't just follow a scent. That day he followed something stronger, instinct, duty, and something I can only call heart. He believed when others doubted. He acted when others hesitated. And because of him, 4 children came home. Applause filled the park. But Lauren stepped aside as Emily came forward. She stood beside the statue, holding a small piece of paper. She looked nervous at first, then cleared her throat and began to read. "This is what I wrote in my journal that night," she said. "It's the last thing I wrote before Zeus found us." She looked down and read slowly. "If anyone finds this, please tell Zeus he's our hero. He didn't just find us, he saved us. And because of him, I believe heroes are real." A hush fell over the crowd. Many wiped away tears. Even Lauren had to glance away for a moment to compose herself. When Emily finished, she stepped over to Zeus, who was still seated calmly by the statue, and wrapped her arms around him. "I told you," she whispered into his fur. "You are our hero, dog." Zeus closed his eyes and leaned into her gently. After the ceremony, the playground filled with children running, laughing, climbing. Parents smiled. Conversations flowed. Life moved forward. But every person who passed through those gates stopped, even briefly, to lay a hand on the statue. Some whispered thanks. Others smiled quietly as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold. Lauren sat on a bench nearby, watching it all. Zeus lay beside her, head resting on her boot. "You did good," she said softly. He thumped his tail once against the grass. It wasn't the medals, the applause, or the statue that mattered most. It was the fact that 4 children were tucked safely in their beds tonight, dreaming of stars instead of darkness. And in a town that once feared silence. It was a single bark that reminded everyone what it meant to believe, to search, and to never give up. Zeus had done more than rescue the missing. He had restored hope and in doing so, had become a legend. Forever.